It's The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. Just sitting here trying to avoid the 7 mistakes I'll make when hiring a financial advisor. Do you get that pop-up? That is my most popular pop-up. I see that several times a day. Sponsored article with the headline, 7 Mistakes You'll Make When Hiring a Financial Advisor. Man, they're supposed to be so smart, these algorithms, right? This targeted advertising is supposed to be so insidious, so spot on. They know everything about me. How do I keep seeing this? Am I hiring a financial advisor? Do I need wealth management? I don't think so. They are barking up the wrong flagpole. Oh, what's going on out there? All right, just a couple of quick headlines that we have to mention. The Orange Menace trying to get in his licks in the last, 64 days, is it? Yep, 64 days to inauguration. Trying to get in his last licks. Oil and gas drilling rights in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska to be auctioned off. It's more noise than anything else. This all can't happen in 64 days. The Biden administration would have to finish up the deal. And obviously that's not going to happen. So you're going to see that headline. It's attempted skullduggery, but I don't think we have to worry about this one. Nothing happens without the Biden administration's approval because just how the timeline on this sort of thing works out. So if you see that headline, you can be annoyed at the Orange Menace for a number of reasons, and you can add this one to the list. But I don't think we should get too overly concerned. Now, where we can get a little more concerned, us lefties, peaceniks, will have mixed feelings about this. Of course, the Orange Menace has wanted to extract us from Afghanistan and Iraq for quite a while. And he keeps getting shot down. Now, I've complained quite loudly that the presidency has too much power. And the Orange Menace has revealed that and certainly taken advantage of it in nefarious ways. But even the Orange Menace has not been able to unilaterally withdraw from Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, as I said, we lefties, we peaceniks, have mixed feelings about this because we want out as well. So to have common alliance with the Orange Menace, that doesn't feel right. And apparently people who seem to be responsible keep saying how dangerous it is to withdraw completely. I don't know. This honestly is over my pay grade, and I'm not going to pretend to have a strong opinion about this. My natural inclination is to say get out, because like I said, I'm a peacenik. But the whole rest of the world says, oh, you got to be careful how you do this. It can be very, very dangerous. There can be unintended consequences that are much, much worse than what you fear from having those troops in there. So I don't know what to think. All I know is that he's trying again in the last 64 days to do big things. And he wants to get everybody out. He wants to get all the troops out of the Middle East. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. Keep an eye on that one. It's just something we should keep an eye on. All right, good news, bad news. What do you want first? Regarding President-elect Uncle Joe Biden, he kind of lost the Uncle Joe thing. I called him Uncle Joe all through the primaries and before. He was always Uncle Joe. That was his natural nickname. And you know what? That kind of lost favor. Nobody calls him Uncle Joe anymore. That's not the thing to do. We need a nickname for him. I guess just Joe, right? I don't know. He feels like he needs a nickname. He doesn't, I think the thing is he doesn't feel like Uncle Joe anymore. There's been some speculation out there, and I think maybe it's a pretty decent analysis that I won't argue with, is that he's gotten very serious over the last couple of years. Since the loss of his son, Beau, and his decision to run for president and now being elected president, some pundits are saying, and I don't like to use the some people are saying thing, but I don't recall now where I heard it, but I heard it. And that is that he's taken on a new seriousness. He's gotten, it's an odd thing to say about a guy who's like 89 years old, that he's matured in the last couple of years, since he lost Bo, since he decided to run, and since he won the election. He's become more mature. So he's really not that goofy Uncle Joe anymore, who we all kind of liked. Yeah, he was always a kind of a center-right corporate Democrat who, if you're really paying attention, you're not going to like this guy very much. But his persona, and we're just talking persona now, he's not Uncle Joe anymore. Now, if this translates also into actual policy, if he's really become a serious person now, at the ripe old age of, what is he, 78? Yeah, in fact, I think he's just about to have a birthday. Here, let me look at that up on the Google machine, because I don't recall. I think he's just about to have a birthday. Is that right? Yeah, November 20th. Just a couple days away here. He's going to turn 78. All right. Okay, I got that straight. He's currently 77 for 3 more days, and then he turns 78. All right. But, yeah, the idea that he's matured is very interesting, and I think that's maybe true. And I hope that translates into policy. I hope he has this coming of age. Again, it's very odd to talk about this regarding a 78-year-old man, but yeah, wouldn't it be great if he had this coming of age? Suddenly he's really serious about policy, about the future. Well, okay, what started this conversation, the good news, bad news thing, he's got these transition teams. I should take this moment right now to remind you that I'm recording this early in the morning. It's Tuesday. I've been reading reports that there may be some announcements today, so you might know more than I do by the time you hear this about who maybe some cabinet positions announced. But up to this point, so far, it's just been these teams, these transition teams. And journalist Sean King noted the other day, I'll read his post, "I can't imagine that the Joe Biden transition team for the Department of Justice could be more disappointing. This is the official team," and he posts the entire roster here. It's quite a lot, a couple dozen here. Sean King writes, "Most are corporate lawyers. One works for the firm that represents Trump in all of his cases. No progressive prosecutors, no public defenders, no professors who focus on reform and change, no impacted families or organizers, none." I don't know what that means. What's an impacted family or organizer? Impacted? I don't know what that means. Anyway, it's a problem, he writes. This group could not change the justice system if they wanted to. Don't tell me to give them a break. They are forming the teams and making decisions now, as in right now. That's why I want you to go to BidenJusticeDemands.com. And he provides a link here to click on. We are committed to making sure Biden does right by us. So far, I'm not convinced. So, once again, I never pretend to know things I don't know. I look for information that I find trustworthy. Sean King, I find trustworthy. He's an author and an activist. And he wants you to go to BidenJusticeDemands.com. So, yeah, check it out. Sean King is not happy with this list of names on the Justice Department transition team. So there's the bad news. All right, the good news. Reading from Bloomberg right now. Biden fills economic posts with experts on systemic racism. When it comes to economic policy, President-elect Joe Biden is putting racial disparities high on the agenda as he assembles his administration. The incoming president tapped Mehrsa Baradaran, whose book The Color of Money is a key reference on the racial wealth gap, to prepare the Treasury Department for the transition. She's joined by Lisa Cook, an economist at Michigan State University, on the so-called landing team for the Federal Reserve and banking and securities regulators. They are among more than 500 experts who will focus on race as they shape Biden's policies on issues like housing, health, and small business lending. Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris are emphasizing diversity as they prepare to assume power next year. Women comprise more than 50% of the new administration's landing teams, according to their transition team, and more than 40% of advisors are from groups that are historically underrepresented in the federal government, like racial minorities, people with disabilities, and those who identify as LGBTQ. So there you go. We've known all along that Joe was only going to take us so far. But there's a little good news, bad news. Justice Department, at least according to Sean King, disappointing. On the economic front, especially as it regards underrepresented communities, maybe some good news. I don't know. All I know is what I read in the paper. That's all I know. Who said that? Will Rogers, I think, said that. You know, Will Rogers is a name that is rapidly fading into obscure history. I think a lot of people don't know who Will Rogers was. He was a commentator, humorist, basically the first stand-up comedian. He and Mark Twain kind of invented the art of stand-up comedy. He'd go around and give speeches, do his routine to large audiences. Born, I'm looking at his bio right now, 1879. Died 1935. So yeah, the early part of the 20th century, he was out cracking wise. I never met a man I didn't like, was a quote that it's attributed to Will Rogers. And some of you are saying, well, of course, Will Rogers. Everybody knows Will Rogers. But I'm thinking, you know, I'll bet there are a lot of people who don't. You should look into Will Rogers. Quite an interesting character. I think I saw, it was probably an American Masters series, PBS American Masters, where they do a nice 1-hour biography, documentary. I think there's one on Will Rogers out there. All I know is what I read in the paper. Yeah, he'd stand up and provide humorous commentary on the politics of the day. Here, while I got the Google machine out, let me look for some Will Rogers quotes. Ah, yes. I am not a member of any organized political party. I am a Democrat. Good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of that comes from bad judgment. Now, sometimes, you know, people are misquoted all the time. So I hesitate to even continue here, because I'll bet a lot of them are wrong. But Will Rogers really did, I mean, that was his thing, to be pithy and quotable. So I think some of these are probably true. Even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. That's pretty good. Everybody is ignorant, only on different subjects. This one rings true. I think this one is right. I don't make jokes. I just watch the government and report the facts. Well, I've strayed a little bit. That's Will Rogers. If you don't know Will Rogers, he's worth your time. Okay. Well, we should talk a little bit about, as much as I hate to do it, the Orange Menace really is in a position to do some damage. And these 64 days, man, that's why we're counting him down, because he can do some damage from where he sits. Making the headlines here, Trump plans last-minute China crackdown. Now, see, this is interesting, because this is another area where the right-left divide is not very clear, and where some of us might squirm a little and feel pretty damned uncomfortable finding yourself on the same side as the Orange Menace. Because according to Axios, President Trump will enact a series of hardline policies during his final weeks to cement his legacy on China. He'll try to make it politically untenable for the Biden administration to change course as China acts aggressively from India to Hong Kong to Taiwan, and the pandemic triggers a second global wave of shutdowns. watch for National Intelligence Director John Ratcliffe to publicly describe in granular detail intelligence about China's nefarious actions inside the U.S. Trump officials plan to sanction or restrict trade with more Chinese companies, government entities, and officials for alleged complicity in human rights violations in Xinjiang and Hong Kong or threatening U.S. national security. The administration also will crack down on China for its labor practices beyond Xinjiang forced labor camps. National Security Council spokesperson John Ulyat told Axios, "Unless Beijing reverses course and becomes a responsible player on the global stage, future U.S. presidents will find it politically suicidal to reverse President Trump's historic actions." Senior administration officials are discussing expanding a Defense Department list of Chinese companies deemed to have ties to the Chinese military. An executive order issued last week barred U.S. investment in 31 such companies, and any additions would likely face a similar restriction. Officials plan to target China's growing use of forced labor in the highly competitive fishing industry. Coerced and unpaid labor isn't just a human rights concern. It can also give Chinese fisheries an advantage over rivals in an industry with geopolitical significance. Trump officials have been looking to move more hawkish China experts into senior roles across the government. Director of National Intelligence Senior Advisor Cliff Sims told Axios, quote, "Director Ratcliffe will continue playing a leading role in coordination with other national security principles in delivering a necessary mindset shift from the Cold War and post-9/11 counterterrorism eras to a focus on great power competition with an adversarial China." So here's the thing. I think the theme of today's show is we're diving into water that's way, way over my head. I don't pretend to be an expert on these things, but just as a guy who reads the paper, you gotta know that China is a bad, bad player. And if all of the details I just read from this Axios article were initiatives describing a Biden administration a year from now, or an Obama administration 5 or 6 years ago, nobody would blink an eye. The lefties would say, well, yeah, China's a bad player. We really should do something about them. The forced labor, my God, the camps, the concentration camps for the thousands of Uyghurs, the national surveillance state they've set up. You can love the Chinese people. You can love the history of China. Nobody can love the current government of China. No right-thinking American socialist with whom I have a great and fond allegiance will defend the Chinese Communist Party. There is no democracy happening over there. The socialism that I defend, I keep saying on this program, I'm tired of apologizing for the word. But for me and my socialist buddies, if it ain't democratic, it ain't socialism. Small d democracy is the signature defining character of any political economic system I'm looking for. And the Chinese Communist Party is the antithesis of democracy. So I am not a fan of China, not for 1 minute. And much was made in the recent campaign about how Joe was going to be soft on China and we're hard on China. And now we read this report from Axios saying they really want to codify this. They want to make it really difficult, near impossible, for any future president to reverse these tough on China measures. Now, why is the Orange Menace doing this right at the very last curtain call here? Who knows why he does anything? It's always been this weird mix. He's got people around him who want things for their own purposes. Some of them are red, white, and blue patriots. Some of them just want to line their own pockets. Some of them just want political power. Some of them just want a posture. Whatever the area, whatever the policy, we never know what the motivations are. And his motivations, his only motivation is power and ego. We know that. So let's not worry about motivation. The point is it's happening. And again, we're in this very weird position where lefties good true blue lefties should be incensed daily at the Chinese Communist Party. Yes, the Republicans, especially at the convention, oh my God, we kept hearing about the Chinese Communist Party over and over again, and they equated them with the U.S. Democrats. Of course it was ridiculous. But let's not fall into that trap, the enemy of my enemy is my friend thinking. No, Xi Jinping and the government of China are bad, bad news. So, I don't know. This is a big I don't know day. Also here on 64 days to inauguration, we learned that Trump asked for options for attacking Iran. Yeah, in a meeting last week in the Oval Office with all the big players there, all of his top advisors, he said, yeah, you know what? Let's bomb Iran. What do you say, guys? Bobblehead Mike was there. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was there. Defense Secretary Christopher Miller was there. General Mark Milley, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They were all in this big high-level meeting. And the Orange Menace said, hey, guys, you know what? I'm still president for a little while. Let's knock the hell out of Iran. Now, they advised against it. So it didn't happen. But he asked about it. He said, could we do this? I think maybe we should. What do you think, guys? So at this stage of the game, he's still trying to go out with a bang. No pun intended. He didn't overrule his advisors. I guess he acquiesced. So the old adults in the room thing, I guess, still holds true. At this point, I'm not sure if he ordered a strike that the leadership disagreed with, that they'd follow his orders. Yeah, he wanted to strike Iran's main nuclear site, which I don't know if he talked with his buddy Netanyahu about this, but yeah, you think that might have opened up a nice little shooting war? So it looks like we dodged that bullet. Again, no pun intended. Joe Biden has promised to revisit the Iran deal, nuclear deal. These 64 days, oh my God. You thought it was a long slog getting to the election day. You thought that was a long wait, right? It's like a kid waiting for Christmas. It just seems like it'll never come. This is going to be the longest 64 days of our lives. And then even beyond the 64 days, when the Orange Menace is on the helicopter and Joe Biden puts his right hand in the air, and once again, there will be literal dancing in the streets like we saw a couple of Saturdays ago. There's going to be dancing in the streets around the world. People ringing bells and firing guns into the air, however you celebrate in your neighborhood. But even beyond that day, we have to be concerned because the Orange Menace seems to be quite literally setting up kind of a shadow government. He's got his merry band of deplorables, 70 million strong, who hang on his every word, and he's going nowhere. He's going to stay in the spotlight. He's going to have an opinion about everything. He's going to shape opinion about everything. At this point, he's got the entire Republican Party under his thumb. And who's to say that's going to change even after the inauguration? If he's got 70 million people strong, and these are the people who vote in Republican primaries, well, then the entire Republican Party is going to have to kowtow to him. For how long? Years, possibly. All the way up to the next election. Certainly through the midterms, maybe all the way to 2024, and maybe beyond, as long as the guy lives. Who knows how long this can go on? We have got to put our heads together and find a way to marginalize the deplorables, to free up reasonable conservatives. I've often said, especially in regard to the coalition that it took to win this election, right? It took a coalition from the radical lefties to progressives to moderates to and even conservatives. It took this coalition, right? I'm more than happy to have conservatives on the field of play. It's really honestly okay. We should have conservatives. I'm fine with that. But we can't have these deplorables anymore. They are not welcome in the political spectrum. will not accommodate the Orange Menace and his deplorables. There's no place for them. So somehow we have to embrace the reasonable conservatives. I've got to somehow continue an alliance with them to hold that line against the Orange Menace and his 70 million strong merry band of deplorables. Talk about a political challenge here. We all have to be cognizant of this. We all have to be aware of the danger that he poses and that his 70 million deplorables pose. We've got to be able to give conservatives some cover so that they can be viable on the playing field. Because without them, if that line of defense falls, well, then waiting right in the wings, right behind them, are the deplorables. And they are definitely on the field as we speak. They control the Republican Party. The task of pushing out the deplorables and I've said all along, I've been saying for years the Republican Party has to be literally destroyed because it's been consumed by the deplorables. I suppose there is a scenario where the Republican Party can be resurrected as a reasonable Eisenhower Republican Party. That would be fine with me. Then people like John Kasich and Joe Biden would just be Eisenhower Republicans. At this point, it just becomes semantics. I don't care. But the 70 million have to go away. That 20% of the U.S. population has to be silenced. They're not allowed on the field anymore. And we are a long way from achieving that goal. They're not only on the field, they are playing a major, major role still. Regarding our current situation, our friend Bernie wrote the other day, the refusal of Republican leaders to acknowledge the results of the presidential election is not just an attack on Biden, it is an attack on American democracy and shows the degree to which the Republican Party is moving toward authoritarianism. Yeah, so Bernie brings it in right to today's headlines. Still today, as incredible as this sounds, a week and a half after the race was called and 2 weeks after it was obvious, Republican leaders still refuse to acknowledge the results of the election. And Bernie is right. This is an attack on American democracy. It shows the degree to which the Republican Party is kowtowing to the deplorables, kowtowing to their leader, and none of this changes on January 20th. We still have 70 million strong. We still have their leader calling the shots, and as a result, dictating the actions and the policy of every Republican in Congress. We have a huge, huge job ahead of us. We have a really, really big job ahead of us. We have to be absolutely 100% vigilant. The famous words of Ben Franklin, it's a republic if you can keep it. This ain't over. Holy hell. All right. Let's try to wrap our heads around this and regroup. And we will gather again tomorrow. Just try to figure this thing out. All right. This is The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. I love you.